What were you going to say about the birth order?
2 sisters.
Yeah.
Why was I saying that I have 2 sisters?
I mean, you
what
were
point?
saying,
Oh, clueless. Yeah, all the way back to that. See how I came back around.
You circle back.
I wrap back around.
Over a break, I was with my brothers. We're speaking of sisters and brothers. I have 3 younger brothers. I am the firstborn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that like having?
Firstborns
What's that like having 3 younger brothers?
I'm a nightmare.
Yeah.
Paul, my husband, will watch me walk into a room, and the dynamic of the room changes. Because I'm like
Are you intense?
I take the leadership role. I take the, this is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
What's the plan? So I have to really work on just kind of like putting myself like simmering down, which is really hard. And we were talking about birth order, and I was trying to think of one couple or a couple where both are firstborns.
Do you think that happens very often?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
We were going through, my husband's a twin, so he kind of throws a wrench in the whole thing, which he does often. But he technically is the second born twin.
Right.
So, and the firstborn, his twin, who was firstborn, married a secondborn. My brother is secondborn. He's the firstborn son. All that stuff matters, but he married a secondborn. My third brother married a firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of babies will marry each other, like secondborns, third and second, but you very rarely see 2 firstborns together. I can't imagine. I mean, Paul and I are in a tenth house. He's a twin. I'm a firstborn.
Did he have other siblings, or is it just him and his brother,
just
right?
him and his brother, which is like a copy paste of himself, pretty much.
For sure, yeah.
And then I was asking you, you're middle.
Yep.
And then Colleen is not a firstborn. She's second.
She's second, yeah.
Yeah, I love knowing what birth order people are.
It's pretty fascinating, right?
It tells me a lot about someone.
Yeah. Well, especially depending on the dynamic of like what else is around you. So you're firstborn, but you have
I have no sister.
three younger brothers. And then I'm a middle child with an older and a younger sister.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not all that surprising that I have a ton of females in my life.
You do. Tell me about your females. You have 10 chickens. I mean, how many hens?
Well, I have 7 left. We had 10 hens. I have 7 left. My dog is female. Up until Pedro joined the team, like every member of my team is women. And Pedro's the only one out of there's 2, 4, 6, 8 of my team.
That's wild.
And 7 out of 8 are
a lot
women.
of hens.
Yeah, a lot of hens hanging around. Yeah. A lot of hens hanging around.
My husband's the same way. We have 7 hens. We have 2 female cats. We just got a female puppy.
Yeah.
And he has 2 daughters. We have 2 daughters.
My mom was the oldest of 8 kids. And then...
So you had a firstborn mom.
I had a firstborn mom, yeah. Of a large family.
Wow.
So essentially she was, the OG hen in her family, right?
Yeah.
Because there was 8 kids in 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So my grandmother had 8 kids in 9 years. And so when you do that, obviously, my mother was a mother basically her entire childhood,
I
right?
definitely, I accept that role. And there's like memes going around, like when you travel with a firstborn sister and she's got her phone on, she's like, are you having fun? Everybody.
So yeah, like when you travel, like are you in the airport, who takes lead?
I do. I think I do. I mean, Paul will book the flights because he's just on his computer more. But like at the airport. Yeah, I'm doing the mom math. I have TSA pre-check. The girls come with me. He has not. I've had TSA pre-check for 10 years. I got it when my first baby. When I had my first baby, I remember doing the appointment. He will not get it.
Why?
I don't know, and because. I don't know. So we go to the airport.
TSA pre-check is probably the best thing to ever happen to air travel.
We go to the airport. The girls go with me because they're under my TSA pre-check, and he goes this way. And he goes to regular TSA.
Is that intentional just so he gets a break?
I do wonder. And then we are the people that we get to the gate when they are making the last call. Like we are not 2 hours early.
Yep.
So we have been in many situations where I'm going to make the flight because I'm in TSA pre, and I'm like, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm willing to leave you.
Yeah.
I have the keys, the car keys. And he has no problem cutting the line and being like, excuse me, I have a flight to catch.
Yeah.
And I'm more important.
Yeah.
He will cut. He will cut instead of the TSA.
Talk about anxiety. If I had to go through an airport line and get to the front, that would give me a
You'd rather miss the flight
attack.
almost.
Yeah, I'd rather miss the flight than do that.
He has no problem.
He has no problem.
None.
But that's what's wonderful about Paul. Now, Colleen, on the other hand, we have to be there 2.5 hours early. We have to if the boarding starts, like the pre-boarding starts at 3:00, we have to be there at 2:45 to stand with everybody else. Really? And I'm like, why don't we just sit here? We don't need to be on the flight for another half an hour.
No, you're just gonna go on the plane and sit.
Right, and especially even with the first class seats, we'll get first class seats, and then we'll go. The baggage doesn't matter. We're gonna get a space. Our seat is there. I would rather just come to the end and then sit down at the end. And
that's what we do.
It's gotta be at the beginning.
We are always the last family to get on.
Do you check bags?
It depends. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we check them at the gate. We're not. And you have certain needs when I travel and stuff. And we've got to have food that we like to eat and things like that and waters. But as terms of checked bags, I got to have everything with me. I don't have that.
Yeah.
That level of. I've had to let that go with Paul.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just flew with our new puppy. We just got a golden retriever. We gave it to the girls for Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
From mom and dad.
I saw that. The very cute puppy. Looks like a big ball of fur.
Yeah. Little stuffy. A little live stuffy. So that was fun. We were the last on the plane because of the puppy. We just
From your social media, though, it seemed like it went well.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Paul, true to his nature, was puppy mayor, never put her in the crate or the carrier, had her out the whole time, shaking hands, talking to the attendants, talking to the gate people. And I'm over there, cleaning everything up. But yeah, he loves the social aspect of a puppy and the attention and all that. So she did great. We flew down there. And the flight attendants let us keep her out of the carrier. And then on the way back, they were a little stricter.
Yeah.
But she did fine. So, yeah, we have a puppy now.
That's crazy.
It's wild.
What kind of puppy was it?
It's a golden retriever. Yeah.
God bless you. I remember when we got Roxy. Yeah, that was a long 6 months.
I know.
Getting the puppy used to it. And it's like a newborn.
Yeah.
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 Well, especially the way that Colleen hovers over stuff. Yeah, I just let shit roll a little bit, but
the puppy better be a little tough to survive on our farm.
Yeah,
we call it our farm, the Lashway farm, because our chickens. You better be savvy because it's rough out there.
Well, I remember when we got chickens and Colleen cleaned the coop twice a day, and she had anxiety over it, and she was just she makes it such a big deal. And granted, we don't have flies and it's nice to go out there and everything else. But I was we have a beautiful coop and everything else. But I was like, you don't need to do this. Lauren said they clean their thing twice a year. And Colleen's like, absolutely not. And all this kind of shit. And
I know. I'll look at Paul. I'm like, do you close the chickens up? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay.
I better survive. Yeah. She brought up something yesterday. She had these, somebody puts them in little, almost like those mice rolling cages where you can put a round ball, but it's got holes in it all over the place, like square holes.
So the chicken can go around the yard.
You go around the yard and not get eaten. So it just rolls in this roll.
Post that to your social media.
She didn't get any of them, but she saw something on social media, and I was like, listen, these chickens.
Buy it. And that is your chicken in a bubble.
Well, and
then my chicken.
Yeah, the crazy thing is that I learned that I'm allergic to eggs, and that's coming off of 4 eggs a day for almost 15 years. And so now we have 7 chickens that produce eggs, and we don't really eat any eggs in our house.
You added to the free flower farm.
That's what we did a lot of last year. Yeah,
free flower farm. Yeah. Y'all are so generous. Mm-hmm. But anyways, okay, so back to maybe the topic for today.
Yeah, what are we talking about?
I mean, it kind of fits in with personality has a lot to do with what we're going to talk about. But basically, I want to talk about burnout. And we both how to avoid it and what habits can you put in place at the beginning of the year. It's January 6th. Everyone's in January kind of putting new habits in, and the spring market, busy season for agents, but like not just agents, like everybody's starting a new year right now and doing new habits. And like, what can you put into place to where you avoid a burnout this year? I have experienced one. You have faced one before, and I think pretty much everybody has, especially in today's world and like the American culture too. Burnouts happen a lot. Yeah. And my personality is either 0 or 100. And I'm such an intense person. I'm a firstborn. I'm a perfectionist. And
when does 0 happen?
0 happened for me.
Yeah.
When my second born was 1 year old, I was doing family photography with the girls at home. And I didn't know how to manage myself and be a new mom and have this side business. And I burnt out, and I closed my computer and I didn't open it for 6 years. That is 0.
Yeah.
And I didn't pick up a camera.
But that's 0 at one specific thing. That doesn't mean that it's 0 across the board.
No, I mean, no.
Yeah.
Then I focused. I was like, everything. I was the mom I wanted to be. But it was too bad that I couldn't do both.
No, it wasn't.
No,
it wasn't.
I mean, you're right. Burnouts aren't bad. I was redirected and I refocused. But what I've done now is I've picked it back up. So I've picked photography back up. I'm back in this kind of work world and entrepreneur world, and filed an LLC and started doing work with both the girls in school full time now. But in December, my engine started smoking. Yeah. And that's what will happen is I am a perfectionist, and I want to do a good job, and I can see what I want. I can see the end result, and I will work myself into the ground to get there as fast as possible. Yeah. And the engines will smoke and the train will fall apart, and I'll burn out, and I'll say, never mind. Yeah. So personally,
which from the outside is very, very obvious. I mean, I saw it coming. I think I had a conversation with you in December about it.
Yeah, you were like, go home.
Go home. I was like, stop working so hard. I was like, there is time for everything.
It's so hard for me to manage myself. And I think that's for a lot of people. Like, I talk to a lot of friends, even I have friends that are stay-at-home moms and they burn out. I have mom, like my sister-in-law is very successful in the workplace, in the financial realm. And I mean, I'm seeing her go through a burnout. So you see it all around you, and you faced one. You faced one 6 years. Is it 7 years ago?
No, it's sooner than that. So it was like end of 2020, 2021.
Okay, so
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was right around now. The clock switched over, and you were facing a new year, and you had met all your goals, and you had succeeded, and you were ready to like close shop.
Yeah, I think that was probably
that a burnout?
Yeah, so the term burnout is interesting too. I don't know what like the derivative meaning specifically is, but yeah, I would say that it was, I was at the end of my rope, right? Like there was nothing, I had nothing left as far as motivation and push to do like what I needed to continue to do, or what I told myself I needed to continue to do. And yeah, that was but it wasn't like I knew it was coming, and I knew that I was getting closer and closer to the end. So I started to see the writing on the wall. And I think what we do as sort of driven and motivated people sometimes is we ignore the reality of what is coming, because changing that is harder than continuing to go in the same direction, like mentally.
Yes. And I think so
that's why you get to the point where you're like, you close your laptop and it's 6 years. Like 6 months before that, you could have just gone, you could have probably said, hey, listen, if I adjust things and I do one family a month,
set guardrails for myself.
Set guardrails. So
if I had done that, I could have figured it out and probably found a happy medium, and who knows where I would have landed. And you know what's crazy is I was doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people burn out right on the edge of like making it, where they're like, I can't keep up what it took to get here. And I think
I think that the moment that I think people live in burnout.
Yeah.
So like,
I see that too. It's very unhealthy.
So sometimes you define burnout as the moment that you recognize that you're in burnout, but like, I don't know that that's like, you were burning out before. It's just that sometimes when you reach a goal or hit the end of a year, or there's a specific period of time, or a life event happens, or something makes you be introspective and take a look at the moment that you're
make the change.
That's when you realize that you're in burnout. So a lot of people, and we can call it anxiety, we can call it like whatever it is, but some people just live in that state.
Yeah, you see it.
And they'll realize that they're burnt out when they accomplish a goal. Like, so, you know, you make $250,000 in a year, and you do it, and then you go, and then you realize you're like, oh shit, like I am stressed to the max. And then if you have to just continue to do the activities, that's when you're introspective and you look back and you go, oh my God, look at what it took to do what I wanted. And then there's a decision that people make, sometimes either because of necessity, like they've increased their living standards to the point where they can't stop doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Or they've defined themselves by the activities that they're doing. So if I'm not this, then what else am I? Right.
Right.
And so if you look,
and then there's a lot of people that can't let go of, well, I said I was going to do it, so I'm not going to stop. They can't change course.
It's
like a perfectionism, like they are letting people down or saying I was going to do this and now to say I'm not. Like people can't even think about doing that.
Well, I think it's the story that you create for yourself, right? Like you have created this person, this
achiever, yeah.
Yeah, like you've created this avatar of who you are defining yourself to be. And then once you sort of confirm that that's what you want, you start, and it's especially hard for people who get external recognition for the person that they've created. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily align anymore with who they want to be or what they want to do.
Absolutely.
But if you get external sort of recognition and praise for that person, then it's that much harder for you to step out and go, you know what, it's, to change at that point is extraordinarily difficult. It takes a lot of willpower.
You're so right. And I love what you just said. You've created a person, and a lot of times it's not who you actually are or who you want to be anymore. But you're on this track, and that's where I start to see my engine smoke is when I turn into a person that's doing really well successfully and making all the marks, getting the checking off my to-do list, but I'm not working out. I'm not happy when my husband comes home or like not ready for him to come home because I haven't even started dinner or ordered the groceries even. And the girls, I'm always like 5 minutes late to picking them up, 5 minutes late to getting them to where they needed to be. Everything's a mess and I'm forgetting stuff. And like, that's not who I might be making all the marks, but I'm not who I want to be. I want to be like a good mother, a good wife, healthy, get good sleep. And when those start to separate for me, that's when I burn out.
Right. But you're burning that whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so what I want to do this year is try to set up guardrails for myself to avoid that disconnect. And I think a lot of people, and that not that this is like a therapy session for me, but just this is just my own experience with burnout as an entrepreneur and a mom. It's like a lot of people think if I just get a break, I'm just going to take a break and then I'll come back to it. And a lot of people think the antidote to burning out or the antidote to fix, your engine smoking and you dropping balls is to rest. and like to take breaks. And that is great. And it does have a purpose, but that is not the answer at all.
No, because you're just picking it back up right where you left off, right?
Yes.
And then it's even harder to sort of pick that weight back up. You know, what I think, what comes up for me when we have this conversation is I think people go on autopilot, you know, with work or with activities, and they continue to do things and they never check in with themselves. And so a lot of what I have done over the past couple of years to sort of shift away from being at a point of burnout, right, is I really try to recognize and notice in the moment that I am exactly what I'm choosing to do. And then realize that even if I continue to choose to do it, then it is a conscious choice. Mm-hmm. I think people run into problems with actually like getting to the point that they can't do it anymore or giving up or like going crazy is because that they've ignored the decision that they're making over and over and over and over again to the point where like you get to the point of no return. So like I check in with myself all the time and notice in the moment that I'm pushing towards things or the moment that I feel stressed or the moment that I'm like feeling overwhelmed, I check in and I notice in the moment that I am. And again, I might make a decision that this particular thing that I'm doing is not working, right? And I might make that decision not to continue down that path, or I might make the decision and go, you know what, this is hard, this is stressful, this is overwhelming, but it's a conscious decision that I'm making. And I feel like I have more control over it. I think burnout happens a lot when people ignore the decisions that they're making and the path that they're on to the point where they've just lost everything, like all of their motivation, all of their willpower, all of everything. And so I think one of the most powerful things that people can learn to do is two things. Number one is, like I said, simply noticing in the moment that things are happening and not beating yourself up for making the decision to continue down the road that is stressful and overwhelming and potentially will lead to, you know, the end of their rope or burnout. Making that decision and then being okay with it. But then also the power of saying no is something that I think that I've learned over the past couple of years. Saying no to opportunities, saying no to activities, saying no to traditions, saying no to, you know, my wife and I, we say no 90% of the time.
I know.
And
I know you socially. So
yeah,
it's really powerful, but it is very hard for people to do. I don't know why. I think the fear of missing an opportunity it's really hard to know when something comes across your table. Does this fit? And is this meant for me? Is the universe, is God, is life bringing this opportunity to me? What if that's it? And I think what Paul and I have talked about, what I've thought about before is if I know my goals and my whys, it will be very obvious if something fits or not. If something comes across the table or is presented to us, if you already, before opportunities come and before decisions need to be made and before you say yes or no, if you already know your why, your goals, your pillars, the things you're working towards, it's so obvious if it fits or not. So like if your goal is to travel more, spend more time with your kids, and work out or get healthy this year. And those are your three whys of what you're doing, and those are your three goals, and a lot of times they're the same. If an opportunity comes across that doesn't fit in with traveling or experiencing the world, being like more present with your children or getting healthy, then it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And like, for instance,
if it pulls away from those things.
If it pulls away.
Because it doesn't necessarily need to fit into those specific goals, right? But
if it keeps you on track with those goals. So a very simple example. a friend wants to get together for a drink, a girlfriend, and you haven't spent much time with your girlfriend. Does this fit in with like me, focusing on my goal of traveling more this year, spending time with my kids? No, takes it away. Maybe we could go on a trip together, but I don't know. Or getting healthy, getting a drink with someone, it doesn't really fit. And that's not in my goal this year. So what do? Maybe you say, I'll spend time with you, but we're going to go on a walk.
Yep.
And that's how I'm going to spend time with you. And that way you aren't resenting the time with your friend because you're not working towards like your goals.
Well, it's funny. An agent reached out to me, and that actually reminds me because I got to get back to him. But he reached out to me. And he was like, he knows that I don't drink, and so he's like, hey, he sees me hang around the fire all the time, and I was like, he's like, why don't we grab a cup of coffee or like whatever, we can sit around a fire. And what I said back to him, I said, well, why don't we? I'll take my dog. Let's go on a ruck. We can go on a hike, right? Instead, because to be honest with you, like, to dedicate time to this agent and to sit around the fire at my house with my kids around is going to be really difficult for me. But if he wants to join me, I'm going out anyway. I'm happy to have a conversation while I'm doing the other activity. So, that is an option, right? This is more living within an alignment of like, I have to safeguard the amount of time that I have. Like we have such limited time. And if you're going to do anything well, there's a very limited number of things that you can do exceptionally well and dedicate an exorbitant amount of time to, right? But going back to like the fear of missing out on opportunities, I want people to be clear that like if you're smart, hardworking, and ambitious, there is no lack of opportunities. There's not going to be. They just keep coming. And I think you said something else that like I need to know when the decision is right, or like when the right thing is there.
It's hard.
I think that we are all under this assumption, and myself included, but we are all under this assumption that we have like control, or that if we make the right decisions, the right outcome and the right life is going to be there for us. I've said this sort of parable, and I should really learn it like a lot better, but you don't know in the moment whether or not making a decision, even if the outcome of that decision in the immediate timeline or the immediate outcome is positive. We don't know whether or not that outcome is actually going to like provide us with what we want in perpetuity.
It could have a positive outcome, but the reverberations or whatever the path you're headed down is actually negative. So that it's all like perspective. And
do you win the lottery, right? Like a lot of people,
an immediate positive outcome.
Immediate positive outcome is exactly what you want. You get all of the wealth that you want, and then you spend the rest of your life miserable, or you burn through the cash and then you spend the rest of your life with regret.
You're right. Yeah.
Like I think people are under this assumption that they have all of this control. And one of the most powerful things over the last couple of years that I've worked with, my coach and mentor, Aaron Novello, is to release the idea that I have control over sort of everything, that if I make the right decisions, that everything is going to work out well for me and everyone surrounding me. That is like, that's not my power, whether it's God or the universe or nature or the almighty or space, like whatever you believe is the higher power.
Whatever you believe, the one truth is you don't have it.
You don't have it. And even if you don't believe in any of that, man, that's a tough road. That if you think that the outcome of everything is in a direct correlation to you making correct decisions, that's a really hard, that's a huge weight.
That's a way for burnout.
Right?
If you put that on your shoulders.
And so again, like I think one of the things that people need to work on is starting to be conscious of all of these things, be conscious of, in the moment that you are noticing sort of what's going on with you and what decisions you're consciously making, even because people create beliefs, right, over time. And it was an opinion that you've held on to for a very long time and created this loyalty to this thing or this belief and
about yourself
or about something,
Yeah.
you know, and that at one point was like, I had to work out like 90 minutes or 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, to the point where my body was finally like, hey, I'm going to injure you because you're not listening to me. Mm-hmm. Right. But I thought that was a positive outcome, and it can be to a point, right? Like there's so many things in life that we create these beliefs to that money will solve all of your problems. Well, go talk to people who have a lot of money.
Exactly. This is something I wanted to talk about. Is a real fast way to burn out is to believe that there's an end point, mm-hmm. or there's a made it kind of like this was it. Yeah. There isn't. No. It constantly keeps moving. And what's the worst thing that can happen is you actually burn yourself out to get to this goal this belief that you've made that if I just get here, everything will work out. And you burn it all down behind you to get there, and then you get there and then what? So the best thing you can do is to know that it's truly is the journey and the process and the experience, and you learning something from the struggle, and to not have this like end marker that, I mean, it's tough because goals are great, but I think a why is better. Goals are great, but a why.
Well, I think focused attention is important, right? Like, but there's this back and forth between sort of noticing and then being able to like work intentionally, right? So that's why, you know, what we talk about is setting these goals and then quarterly pillars and constantly mm-hmm. checking in. That's why accountability within sales or anything else, fitness, health, nutrition, whatever it might be, coaching, all of that accountability, that's for a reason. The reason that coaching works, why real estate agents hire a coach and they immediately start doing better if the coach is good, is because they're starting to pay attention in the moment that they're doing activities, whether or not those activities are what they should be doing. Most people, without sort of the support of other people or this knowledge which is gained over time, most people don't look at what they're doing for years. They just do the same thing because activities are like beliefs. Mm-hmm. You know, if you get home and you watch the same show every day, mm-hmm. like when you get home from work and you have the same, you go to the cabinet, you get a beer, a drink, like you create habits and then you do them over time continuously to the point where it's hard to break those habits. I know. Right. And that's the same thing with traditions, you know, whether it's a belief or a habit or a tradition. You know, my family and I broke a tradition that I've done since I was a kid, which was to like hang out with my side of the family on Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard because my sisters, I love my sisters, I love my parents, but you know, we noticed last year that going through the holiday season and doing the activities that we had always done, and it's not that there's not good parts in those, but we noticed that doing the things the same way was not producing the outcome. We got through Christmas Eve and it was exhausting. Then Christmas Day, then it was exhausting. We didn't enjoy any of it. And then, you know, it's not that when I say didn't enjoy any of it, that's not true. Like we enjoyed bits and pieces, but the overall feeling for us was just of overwhelm. So we said no. And literally on Christmas Eve, this is the first time in my life, it was just my kids and I. And we sat around and listen, at that point, there's good and bad, right? Like halfway through the day, I think a lot of us outside of Colleen were like a little itchy, right?
Yeah, didn't know what to do yourself.
Well, then we had lots of activities planned and there was good and bad. And to the point where Colleen and I like sat down and talked about it, you know, after Christmas, it settled down and talked about like what worked and what didn't. Mm-hmm. But like, think about if people are listening to this now and they're just getting out of the holiday season and the new year and all that kind of stuff. Like, have you actually thought about what you did over Christmas and New Year and recognized whether or not that still feels like something that you want to do? Because if you don't think about it now, next Thanksgiving, all the plans are going to be made again. Yes. You're going to do the exact same thing and you're going to have the exact same results. And it's very, very difficult.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. But the only reason that I've made any growth is because I've had a coach and a mentor who I've gotten such exposure to 2, 3, 4 hours a week working to identify what is important to me.
Who's not emotionally attached to your tradition.
Right.
Too. And a coach will see your work activities, your habits, like from a non-emotional, they're not emotionally attached to the habit.
Right.
They just see it objectively.
And this wasn't even a decision. This was like the habits of Christmas and the traditions and stuff like that was never something that we talked about. But the exercise of noticing in the moment that you're in and taking responsibility for making that decision and recognizing, because most people make decisions based on habits and traditions and beliefs, but they never actually consciously think about whether that decision is the right one for them. And, that goes back to the way that you do business. If you bring it back to selling real estate, I mean, people do the same things over and over again.
I know. Yeah.
It's what is that? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? Yes. But that is it will drive you insane because you're expecting different results, but not doing anything differently. Mm-hmm. You're going into Christmas wanting it to be better, but you don't change any of the activities that have created the insanity for you in the past. Mm-hmm. You have the same habit and routine in the morning. You eat the same shitty food at the end of the day, and you expect to feel better because you took a vitamin. I think that it's by far noticing in the moment that you're in what's going on and checking in with yourself is probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. And when you do that and you take responsibility and you make a decision, whether it's to go in a different direction, say no, or stay on the same path, mm-hmm. then you take a little bit of ownership for that. And then at the same time, overall, just recognizing that like it's you don't have that much control. You can do everything right and walk out onto the curb and a car comes out and hits you. Like,
I think about that saying all the time. Like, you can be right. And for instance, a relationship, you can be right in an argument and say all the right things and probably be the one that is correct, but lose the relationship. You can do everything right and still lose in life. And I love what you said about whether you change the activity, say no to the activity, or continue with the activity. What you've done is made a conscious decision. So then at that point, it's about your mindset. Mm-hmm. And it's about your perspective. If you're going to say, I actively want to have a busy Christmas, I'm choosing that, then you better have the mindset of I'm going to be grateful for this, for not stopping, mm-hmm. because I made that choice. So now I need to be grateful and positive about it. And if you're going to make the choice of, I want to work 60 hours this spring and not stop and get up every morning and be at the office at 7:00. You made the mindset, I'm going to push myself. Then it's up to you to have like a gratitude element to that of I made the choice to get to the office at 7 and make the sacrifices, and I'm not going to complain about it.
Yeah, I think even just I don't know that gratitude is particularly necessary in that moment, but the simple act of noticing that you've had the conscious thought and you've made the decision alleviates the pressure.
Yeah.
And I think the pressure is created from ignoring the decision that you're making. Because and that comes back to like when you're noticing and you make a decision, then you can always go back, and you mentioned why, your why. Mm-hmm. But if you're noticing in the moment that stuff is happening and you're making conscious decisions, you're always going back to, is this in alignment with what I want? Mm-hmm. And then
and who I am.
Right. And if you've spent the time defining what you want out of life, your why, then you're always recognizing in the moment that you're in whether or not the things that you're doing are in alignment with your why. And that can be really, really powerful. And I don't mean to say that it's easy, but that's happened to me where I have, because I still push myself exceptionally hard.
Yeah.
Right now.
That doesn't go really away. Like a lot of that is personality and just your makeup.
I've drastically changed sort of the trajectory of my life and what I'm focusing my time and energy on. And it's not that I'm particularly I'm working less hours, like in what people would define as conventional work, right? Prospecting, lead generation, like going on appointments and all of that kind of stuff. But I would argue that I'm developing using the same number of hours. Like I'm up doing spiritual things in the morning. I'm reading and listening. I'm learning and educating myself so that I can better help and serve other people, and I can better help and serve myself and my family. Like all of those things are now in alignment. And so even when I get to burnout, which again, that term is such a confusing one, but when I get to sort of the end of my rope, or I feel super anxious and stressed.
Maybe disconnected from what you're doing too. If you're doing all these things and you get to these, no.
I don't know that it's disconnect, because I feel like I'm really connected to it, and being so connected to the why and in alignment with what activities will produce what I believe is the growth that I want. Even when I get to that feeling of overwhelm, I can sit there, and at that point, even when I'm in that like anxious and stressed and overwhelmed state, because of the habit I've created to notice in the moment that I'm in, that I'm overwhelmed, I can sit back and go, okay, well, I am overwhelmed, but this is a conscious decision. This is a season of my life. I am in a season where I am learning and growing exponentially faster personally than I ever have. And so overwhelm and anxiousness and burnout are sometimes a result of pushing like I push.
And they're not bad. Anxiety is not a bad emotion, and overwhelm is not always a bad emotion. Burning out is not, like you said at the very beginning of the conversation, I burned out, meaning I closed my laptop to photography, but it wasn't bad.
No.
I just redirected in what I really wanted to do and who I wanted to be.
Burnout is forcing you. Burnout forces you to be introspective and to look at why. So what happens when you burn out? You go, oh my God, this isn't working. What am I doing wrong? I have to close this and walk away to be able to focus on other things. It forces you to make a decision. It forces your body and your mind to recognize in that moment the decisions that you're making, how it's affecting you. Because most people, myself included, they push that away. I push everything down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, I got to get through this day, through this hour, through this week, through this month, through this year.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, you do that for long enough and a breakdown happens. And the breakdown happens because you've pushed yourself to the point where you've ignored what you know to be true for too long.
True. You're right. Like a burnout is different from a breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
A burnout is way better because you're right. It does force you. And
well, what would you define as a breakdown?
Oh my God. Everything falling apart. I mean, a breakdown would be your marriage falling apart, your health falling apart, your relationship with your kids. Those things that I think most people say are what really matters. Mm-hmm. That would be a breakdown.
Breakdown, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, one of the...
and those happen.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really, really underrated is who you choose to partner with in your life. And, I can only speak from personal experience, and I've been very, very fortunate with, and which is different than lucky, but I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful partner in this life that is supportive and, is in alignment with the roles that we've created and the direction that we're heading. And, I heard somebody say, and I think it was in maybe George H.W. Bush's book that I read a really long time ago, but he was talking about he and his wife and the fact that, their understanding, what they realized down the road is that they were always willing to go in a relationship like 75% of the way. So like it didn't have to be a 50-50 split. Like you didn't have to be right or wrong 50% of the time and the other person was right and wrong 50, or you didn't have to have 50% of the responsibilities or 50% of the overwhelm or 50% of the anxiety all of the time. It didn't have to be even. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, when you're willing to, and your partner is willing to go 75% of the way, then there's this middle ground of like 50% of the time that even if it's a season of 6 months or a year or 2 years where somebody is giving more than they're receiving because the partner or the person on the other side is going through something where they can't give an equal distribution of love or attention or effort or whatever it might be, that's okay. Yeah, because there will be a period of your time in your life where like you can't give as much.
Brene Brown has said that as well. I've heard that with her, where she has come to her husband and they said, okay, I'm at a 20% today. I cannot give any more than that. And the husband will say, okay, I got the 80. Yeah. I got the 80 until you let me know. And then she'll have 60% in her bandwidth. And he's maybe you don't always get to 100. Maybe he's at a 20 and you're at a 40 and you say, okay, we're at 60 together. Then we're only going to get 60% of life done right now. Yeah. And what is that 60% for us? So that happens, and having a partner and having a coach where you can say, to your mentor, your coach who's helping you, like, this is happening in my life outside of work that's taking up a lot. So I've only got 40%. How to help me manage that 40% that I can devote to work. Yep. And I think that's great about a coach. I've never had a coach. You've had them for decades. Mm-hmm. And I find it really, really interesting.
I think, and I have a lot of coaches right now. Like I have a body coach that helps keep my body in shape. I have a mindset coach. I have a business coach. Like my kids have coaches for anxiety, for sports, for, teachers. And, again, like I just think
you mentioned sports, and it's so funny. I don't think I've had a coach since I was a child. Mm. And it's like almost like this weird thought process that adults go through. When you become an adult, you think, okay, I'm an adult now. I don't need a coach anymore. It's a childlike, you kind of put it in a childlike bucket, but it's not true.
But I think that you do. So you just you haven't formalized the relationship. But let me ask you, so are there people that you go back to over and over and over again on like social media or YouTube to gain knowledge?
Yes.
That's a coach in one sense, right? Like, and I think that that's the cool thing that's happening with the relay of information, because if you go back to like how things used to be, like you used to have to gain knowledge directly from another individual. If you go way back, like if you needed to learn how to cook something or like hunt, like hunter-gatherer times, you needed to learn directly from another individual. Mm-hmm. And what I think has happened over time is that the person that gives out the information puts it into a book, and then the teachers in this education system, and more specifically higher education, are now instructed to teach you from a book that has knowledge from somebody else that then you're supposed to go and learn with hundreds of other people in the moment. And I think that that's where this disconnect has happened, where now with social media and attention, you can gain like a parasocial relationship with an individual, gaining that trust and confidence that they know what they're doing and saying. Because I can't sit on this camera with you for 2 hours a week and produce 8 reels every week and put out all this content and not sort of give people an indication of who I am. Mm-hmm. If I am successful in fooling, I wouldn't be successful in fooling people if the content that I put out there wasn't in alignment with what I actually believed. Mm-hmm. And if you go back and you watch a lot of the original content that I put out, that was very true. Mm-hmm. I was putting out curated content based on a social media company that was giving me ideas, and I would read off of, an idea script and then put that content out there. And you can tell, like, the way that I communicate what I believe in now is drastically different than what I did then. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the beauty of social media and the way that attention is gained now, I think you're seeing a lot more value and education coming from an individual who has done it.
You're right.
Directly to the individual who wants to learn it.
We can bypass that disconnect. The like interpreter.
Mm-hmm.
You can go directly to the author.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of like the cooking expert. Like I can watch someone cook on YouTube every week and learn from them.
So like I watched the Martha documentary. Did you watch that?
Yes.
Yeah. So like she was the first in television to sort of buck the trend of the traditional way of like cooking shows, right?
Yeah,
she gave
teaching.
Personality to it, and she was like more authentic because that's who she was,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so like I think that it's going to be really powerful to start to see the transition of how people educate themselves from just this generalized education to more specific, valuable knowledge that's being passed on from one person to another
online.
And we see that in real estate right now. And that's why the opportunity that we have at EXP with distributed leadership, which is essentially the rev share model, there has never been a time where somebody who sells $1 million in real estate or earns $1 million in real estate on a yearly basis, what incentive would I have to share all of my knowledge outside of just being a good person? What would be the value in me sharing all of that knowledge to another agent in the marketplace? When you have these kings and queens up top who own the brokerages, they're collecting all of the money off the top, right? And I'm sitting there working them and I'm giving them money. But what incentive if I create and I produce outsized outcomes and I gain all of this information, I collect all of this knowledge, and then I execute it and I prove to know what to do, what is the incentive for me to go out there and give it to somebody else? In years past, that there hasn't been any value to me. There. And so it's much more valuable for me to continue to do the activities that I'm doing to create the money that I need to make in order to, accomplish what I want to accomplish. And now through social media or through rev share, at distributed leadership at a brokerage like this, that's where the knowledge I can go and pass that along. And I'll tell you at this point in my life, that is a much more valuable use of my time, both for me and for the community in general. And so that's, again, living in alignment, noticing in the moment that maybe perhaps not making $1 million is the most important thing anymore and giving up on that. And maybe making a lot less.
That was leading you to burnout.
Yeah. And
it
just
wasn't
consuming.
Truly aligned with who you are.
Because I make the money, and then to reward myself for making the money, I spend the money to get the dopamine hit of buying something new or keeping up with somebody else or going on the crazy vacation, when at the end of the day, all I want to do is like hang out in the garden with my wife. That's how I want to spend my time, right? So like, why am I'm doing all of these things? I'm working hard to gain the money, to gain the recognition, to spend the money, to have to go and make more money. And all the while, I'm not actually helping anybody else. I'm just really being selfish and trying to accumulate wealth. And now it's such a wonderful thing because I've learned that I can let go of that. Now, we live on an economic planet. I still need to make money. Yes. My wife doesn't work. So like I am the sole breadwinner for my family. So I have to produce income, but also letting go. Like I don't need to go on a $25,000 vacation anymore. Like I have a 7-year-old car, right? 8-year-old car. I bought that car. It was $100,000. A crazy amount of money for me. But now, like I'm not going to buy that car again. It doesn't correlate to the value that it once stood in my life.
You're so like clear-sighted on what actually matters to you, what actually gives back to you.
Yeah.
And coaching does. And I love the idea too, while you are sharing this, back in the day or historically, people didn't have access to your knowledge unless they had direct access to you.
Yep.
But now they do have access to your knowledge literally on a screen. So the accessibility of your knowledge is that much more. And the availability of coaching and having people help you figure out your why, figure out your pillars, figure out where you really want to head, and like keeping you in your guardrails. Maybe you get too close to a guardrail, they all sit together and they let you know, or you let them know. But they have access to you.
Yeah. And I think there will be, because of social media and the way that technology works these days and the availability of brokerages, there's going to be a lot of value, that generalized value that I can put out there for people to consume. But my goal is to create 10, 15, 20 other human beings that are going to go out and help 10 to 15 to 20 other human beings. I have the capacity to directly affect a certain number of people on an individual basis, right? I can inspire a lot. There's people like Tony Robbins that just inspire, millions of people, right?
Yes.
But he has the ability to create like profound leaders that then go out and help other people. And I think that if that to me at this point is my true intention is to share the knowledge and create other leaders, because I think it's easier for me to help create 10, 15 to 20 other leaders who then go out to create 10 to 15 to 20 other leaders than to have a massive impact on 100 or 200 or 300 people. I think it's really hard to direct my personal attention on a one-on-one basis to that many people. Now, I can, again, inspire and hopefully educate.
I mean, this platform, you can reach that many people.
One to many. Yes. Yep. But again, creating on an individual basis on having that much impact on one individual person, like Aaron Neville has had on me, like I have been the recipient of what I believe is truly remarkable. The opportunity that I had to be in proximity, to be in as close of proximity to somebody like that. Right. I've spent 5 days in a house with him and like 6 other guys for 5 or 6 days. Right. Like that level of access, I believe, is unique. And I believe it's an opportunity.
And that level of coaching, I definitely don't have. And that's something that maybe that's a habit I put in place for this year. And I definitely want to come back to this conversation maybe in a couple weeks or, in March or so when things are starting to ramp up, and think about what I kind of set out to avoid a burnout.
But I do want you to recognize too, though, that while we don't have a formalized coaching relationship, that's essentially what our relationship is. Think about a year, 18 months ago when you sat down and you were like, hey, listen, I'm thinking about this business idea. This is what I'm thinking. And what do we spend an hour or two just talking about it? Right. And then throughout you building up your photography business, we had multiple conversations. And then because the relationship was so powerful that we had, there was naturally a partnership that just made sense. And when it did, it was obvious to both of us. And then that partnership came in and there's direct proximity now. And so you're creating those guardrails as you go, whether you know it or not.
Yeah. I'm still in this infancy phase where I still think I'm in control. I'm like, yeah. But I need to figure this out on my own. So I have a lot of development to do in that regard. But I think to kind of conclude, I would say that maybe we've come up with 3 things to avoid that I'm going to really try. And it's not that rest is not, as while it is useful or breaks from things, it is not the answer. And acknowledge and realizing that. I think a lot of people think I just need a break and then I'll come back and I'll feel amazing. And it is true, but you're coming back to the same thing. But
you've also not let it go. Even when you take a break, you've mentally not let go of anything that you're holding on to.
No, in fact, it makes it sometimes worse.
It makes it way worse.
And the example with holidays, you get a break. You get a 10-month break. And then you pick it back up in November in the same spot you left it. Everybody gets a break every year from the holidays. And then they are exhausted again after the holidays.
Right.
So the break, while as tempting it is to just think that's all you need,
that's why Colleen used to call our vacations when the kids were little. They used to call them work trips. She used to call them work trips because it wasn't a break. It wasn't a vacation that. I mean, what did you say to me when how was your holidays? It was great, but it was exhausting.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
Right? You're exhausted coming off of vacation.
The break.
Coming off of time off.
I actually kind of feel worse.
Yeah, it's not time off. And I think that's also recognizing in the moment that things are happening what it actually is. It's not a break. And if you're at the edge of burnout and you're not going to change anything and you try to take a week or 10 days or 5 days or a weekend off.
Detach.
The entire time that you're off, you're thinking about
what you're not doing
and how far behind you're getting. And it actually arguably, and this was why back in the day, I just didn't take a whole lot of vacation or time off because it just didn't feel right. Didn't feel good. So,
wow.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy vacations. I still don't really enjoy vacations now.
Really?
Yeah. I don't I just don't like, that's not, it has to be.
I do, because I'm a 0 or 100 person, typically 0 or 100 miles an hour. I need the 0. I need the 0, but maybe
But
I
you're not
need
at
to fix
0.
it.
You're not at
when
0.
I'm on vacation.
Like when? When have you been at
leave?
Yeah. But like I get that the times that I get that when I hunt. So if I'm in the woods and I'm in a tree stand.
Okay, so there's that argument. Like, find your zeros.
Yes.
And it's not always vacation with the kids.
No.
Or Christmas break.
It never is vacation with the kids.
But that is a good point. Like, rest and breaks and vacations are not zeros.
0 is when your activities are in alignment with what you want and you've made a conscious decision to go in that direction. I am at peace with the outcome. I don't have a huge connection to any particular outcome. Mm-hmm. I set goals because I think it's important to recognize the effort that I'm putting in, whether they're resulting in the outcome that I expect them to have. But I have very little attachment to the outcome. I am much, much more concerned with the constant improvement of the person that I am and the constant movement in the direction at the moment that I believe is important. And in 6 months, I don't know if that direction will be as important as it is right now. But I would say, like you had mentioned, to conclude.
Yeah, we do have to. Not to break the conversation, but do you have to, did you have a hard stop at 12?
I don't know.
Agent attraction call?
Oh, yeah. I probably shouldn't. So that's popped up right there. So no, but I can jump on that a little bit late. That's not my call. It's a call that I'm joining. But I think to summarize, if people are burnt out, I think it's really important for them to notice, be a little bit introspective. And
a lot
introspective, but don't say a lot right now. Just get them into it a little bit more. And I'm going to go 100% at being introspective. I'm going to introspect the shit out of this. No, Lauren.
I know.
So
I have a lot of work to do.
I think just simply notice in the moment that you're in. And I talk about, you've heard me say this a lot, at our events. When we sit down as a group, when we go to a holiday party, I notice in the moment that I'm in the uniqueness of that period of time, and I'm really appreciative for it. And I think that I try to notice in the moment, anytime that I feel anxiety, I notice, what am I doing? What activities am I doing? Do I believe in these activities? Do I believe that they're going to, continue to give me the feeling and the excitement that I want out of life? Mm-hmm. So I think noticing, I think defining your why, I think picking the right partner, I think getting a coach. Like if you can afford a coach or a mentor, in no uncertain terms is the best thing you could do. If you can't, the beauty of social media is that you can virtually get non-specific coaching, from a variety of different people.
Yeah.
But you have to be much more intentional, because there's not somebody that's going, hey, don't pay attention to that. This is sort of an alignment. Now you make the decision. You can keep going in that direction, or you can choose to go in the direction that I believe is in alignment with what you want as far as outcomes or development. But so you have to be your own guardrails in that situation, but you can get the education that you need.
I love that. And I think too, if we do have to wrap this up, but for instance, a pastor, you can go to church and listen to the pastor every week. But if you don't have someone personally in your life, like a small group leader or a small Bible study who's working with you on a personal level, you're going to get way more out of that than trying to navigate life within the guardrails that the pastor has spoken.
How many people go to church and listen to the priest do the sermon, and at the end of the sermon, they have no idea what the priest said?
Yeah.
That's how people consume content online.
Yes. So that's the difference. And when you have this personal coach, when you find that person, when you have a personal, like a Bible study leader, for instance, as an example, you're going to get so much more out of that.
But that can be an accountability partner. That can be amongst the group. So like, you don't necessarily need to go and speak to the pastor. You can, like, if you have the accountability to go, hey, listen, after this sermon, I'm going to go and I'm going to chat with Lauren about what I took away from the sermon. Then I'm going to pay much closer attention. I'm going to formulate thoughts so that I can verbalize my thoughts to someone else. And when that happens, if you have the accountability of knowing that you're going to need to say and communicate your thoughts, you're going to put a lot more time and effort into actually developing the thoughts that you can communicate if you don't have to do that. So that can be an accountability partner. That can be, like surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded, right? That are doing it. Maybe it's not a direct person that you talk to on a weekly basis, but if everybody's moving in the same direction, it's easier for you to move in that direction. So proximity, coaching, all of that stuff is super important. Creating your why. Creating
your why.
Yeah. This is not an easy thing.
Yeah. Life, like when you get knocked down, that's life. When you get back up, that's living. And like, you've got to have your why. We'll circle back. We'll come back to this. I liked this conversation. And I'll give people updates on how I'm doing on my 0 versus 100.
Yeah, make sure you give updates 100%. 100%. Lord Jesus Christ. We'll have some fun with it though. But again, you've now put yourself in proximity to people, myself included.
Yeah, you're very good at it. You're very good about being calm. I love the idea of not caring about the outcome. You do care, but you're not. It's not in the end game for you.
Well, I recognize that just because I get an outcome doesn't mean it's the best outcome for me, even if I want it.
So I love that I'm like following someone like that. So
yeah, cool.
All right.
Thanks for listening, watching, whatever you're doing.
Yep. Bye, y'all.
See ya.